What's up everyone, Darcblade here with an opinion piece for Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter World Iceborne. And that is the subject of meta in the game. Now meta could be described as the most effective tactic available and applies to pretty much any game out there. This can normally result in the best builds, most effective way of playing, best guns, best weaponry, best character or best team, so on and so forth. So it can be applied to pretty much any genre of games out there. But when it comes to Monster Hunter, meta is a little bit more cloudy. Whilst yes, some people will argue that there is a meta and there is only one way to play this said meta, you have to ask yourself, is there really a meta in the game? Now most of the time, some hunters out there will see the meta as the most effective way to deal damage to a monster. And whilst that is a true meta in some respect, it's only really applying to damage output. The way I see it is there are different types of metas out there. These are all reflected in the various playstyles, weaponry and builds that you can create in the game. The way I see Monster Hunter World meta is it can be divided into 4 aspects. You have offensive, defensive, support and utility. Each one of them has its own metas in regards to the builds you can create for them and the skills that they utilise. Now the offensive meta or offensive builds in the game, these are for players who want to deal out the most damage possible to a monster. Making builds that utilise high raw attack, high affinity, high elemental or elements, whilst combining set bonuses like Master's Touch, True Critical Element or the True Dragon Vein Awakening. Builds and sets made around these various skills can ensure that your hunter is dealing out the most damage possible, and thus kind of falling into the offensive meta category. Obviously the downside is, whilst yes, the DPS for this meta way of playing is going to be incredibly high, allowing you to take down monsters relatively quickly, should you unfortunately take a hit from a monster, then builds that focus on these are going to have next to no survivability unfortunately. Which brings us on to the defensive meta. These defensive builds obviously focus on high defense, high health pools, health regen, guard related skills, and set bonuses such as super recovery, hasten recovery, and divine blessing secret. Players who focus on the defensive meta obviously have the bonus of having the highest survivability in the game, meaning that they can comfortably take hits, block attacks, and rarely have to worry about carting during a hunt. The downside about focusing on this form of meta is of course hunts are going to take longer because you don't necessarily have the DPS to combine with the defensive skills. Which moves us on to the next 2 meta ways of playing, which is the support meta or the support builds. This is a little bit of a niche category, but there are builds out there and ways of playing that give you the most effective tactics available when it comes to supporting your hunting party. Support builds of course focus on skills like wide range, healing based skills like recovery up, speed eating, free meal, combined with set bonuses like free meal secret, and tool specialist. Builds that focus in the support meta are able to quite easily keep their team alive by buffing them and of course healing them. The downside of the support meta though is that you have to rely on teammates to effectively get a hunt done quite quickly. Which brings us on to the 4th meta that I see, which is the utility meta or utility builds. These builds are all about quality of life, making hunts feel easier than they are, utilising skills such as earplugs, flinch free, tremor resistance, power prolonger, quick sheath, as well as set bonuses like True Gaia's Veil. Players who like to focus on utility skills in their builds ensure that hunts feel a little bit easier than they are. The downside of course for utility builds is unfortunately they are a little bit of a jack of all trades. So they're not going to get hunts done as quickly as DPS or offensive builds, and they're not going to have the survival of defensive builds. So that's basically how I see the meta in Monster Hunter World. It's a little bit of a different way of looking at it in all honesty, but hopefully this is giving you some idea to the thought process behind the builds that I create. Also, hopefully it gives you ideas for your builds as well. Now some players may ask why don't you combine various aspects of these meta types, and you can easily do that combining defensive, offensive, support and utility aspects together, but then you may have a build that is a jack of all trades, master of none. Most of the time when I'm creating a build I tend to focus more on one of these metas, say the offensive one, but not fully go into it. I will apply some defensive aspects or quality of life aspects, just a little bit to give me some survivability to complement the offensive aspects. So I'm not going full on offensive meta, it would be like 75% offensive, 25% defensive. But of course this is just my opinion when it comes to Monster Hunter World meta. There are others out there who would probably disagree with me, but nonetheless I'd be interested to hear what your opinion of the Monster Hunter World meta is. I for one tend to steer away from saying there is only one form of meta, as a game like Monster Hunter has so many variables you have to factor into a build. There isn't just one best way to play, as each hunter out there may perform better with the various playstyles there is. I tend to find that if you are using only one meta, things get a little bit stale and ultimately boring. So mixing it up, playing different ways, using different weapons and more is what keeps the game interesting for me. But until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you my opinion on the meta in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.